You're listening to Ann Arbor's Talk Station, 1290 WLBY, the Lucy Ann Land Show, along with Dean Erskine. Each week on our show, we look at design with Damian on Design. He's with Damian Farrell Design Group here in Ann Arbor. You've been talking about this project for a long time on our show. I've gotten little bits and pieces, and today we actually get to meet your client, Damian.
We do. A very special client, too. Very dear to our hearts, and he brings us chocolate in the office.
Chocolate's important.
Chocolate's very important.
You can never have enough chocolate.
You can never have enough dark chocolate.
Style, John Kotarski.
Yeah.
Where exactly is your home?
It's on the west side. It's in between Miller. It's off of Miller, in between Maple and Newport, and it's the Crescents, they call it. It used to be an old cherry orchard. We're sort of on the top of the hill of that cherry orchard.
And when my mom and dad first came to town, they lived in Hatchard's Crescent. So I know exactly what you're talking about. Your Saunders Crescent.
That's correct.
Okay.
And it was an exquisite subdivision. It was a small homes. They were poured basements, mud set tile, hardwood floors, vaulted ceilings, some of them. We have one of the vaulted ceilings. And it was for professors at the University of Michigan. And now you would call 1,200 square feet a starter home, right?
Yeah. Sadly, yeah.
Well, we actually love it.
Or a living room.
Well, what Damian did to that 1,200 square feet is amazing. And a spoiler alert for your listeners, we absolutely love the design, and so I'm a little biased about that. But,
I love the fact that you stayed in the home that you love so much. So often people have to grapple with moving out of neighborhoods or moving out of situations just because they need larger space. You found a way to make this work in a very special way. Damian, I want you to talk about the relationship you had with Kotarskis in this project.
It started... it was a wonderful start, wasn't it?
It was.
I think it surprised both of us, in a sense, in that it was one of those situations where what I thought needed to happen came very quickly, and that doesn't always happen. So not claiming any particular brilliance about that. It just so happened that John and Terry were so descriptive, and so they captured the essence of how they live and what they do so clearly for me that the solution just poured itself out. It was very, it flowed, all right. But the solution it was a pretty major shift of space for you.
We didn't think of it at the start.
Right.
However, it ended up that way, and it actually it transformed how we lived, how we worked, how we played, and in kind of a way we never expected.
Because the curveball I threw at them was I flipped the dining room and the kitchen. And when I do remember that moment of presentation, there was a sort of a silence, wasn't there? And there were these glances between John and Terry about, oh God, what have we got ourselves into here?
Isn't it amazing to see things through eyes of someone who sees things differently, or they see things that aren't there yet? Talk about that a lot in this design segment here. John, what were the things that you and your wife needed to make this work for you, to stay in the home that you loved, but yet give you it maybe a little bit more space? You only added on 500 square feet, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
But you made it more functional.
Well, and that's right. We only wanted what we thought was two simple things. One was we wanted to define the front entrance. And people were coming to the side entrance, which just sort of put them into our kitchen. We wanted them to get to the front door, and so we wanted a design to do that. And secondly, we love to cook and we love to entertain, and that's how we entertain, by cooking. So we wanted to just a little bit more kind of kitchen space, a little more definition of the front door. We didn't really think that it would mean that big of a change. And we took time to think about it. We fell in love in middle age, and we heard much about remodeling, tearing people apart, and we would be damned if we were going to have our marriage torn apart by a remodeling project. So we spent a lot of time thinking about what we wanted, and it was going to be an adventure, and we were going to consciously make it that.
In fact, I think the term you used was purposeful optimism.
Yeah.
I like that.
And he's maintained it. At least to what we see.
Because unless you've gone through a remodeling project, you have no idea the strain you are under.
Right, the dust,
and
the
especially if
noise.
you're living in it while
Correct.
you're
Correct.
doing
That's what we were told.
Yeah.
You know, and since then, I've kind of done some reading, and there's some empirical data to support the fact that, in fact, you can live a purposeful life if you choose to. So the mind is amazing, and that's what we chose to do. And it impacted then once we took this project on, and we spent time writing a narrative. What we liked about the house we had, what we wanted out of the house, in a narrative form. My
Right.
wife is a professor of English at the University of Michigan, and I taught media studies. I now design online curriculum, so we're both very storytelling oriented. So we tried to tell a story, and we kind of shopped this around to various architects, and they seemed to kind of ignore it and pull something off the shelf that they had done before. Damian seemed to be the only one that actually listened, and I think that's the key thing in an architect, in a team, because remodeling is a team sport.
Absolutely.
It requires a good architect and a good builder. And by the way, I want to bring Steve Shutt in early
Yeah,
on,
we've got to give
Kingston
him credit,
Builder.
yes.
You know, I mean, Steve did a fantastic job because it's Damian's design, and sometimes, you know, on paper, it looks different than when it actually gets out on the job. And Steve could translate that, and wherever anyone saw a problem, Steve saw 4 or 5 solutions.
You gotta love that. Steve Shutt of Kingston Builders.
That's
Builders,
correct.
right.
That's correct.
Yeah.
This is on the Remodelers Home Tour, sponsored by the Builders and Remodelers Association of Greater Ann Arbor. And you can go to bragannarbor.com. It's house number 3.
Right.
And you can see a piece on this along with some of the photos. What a difference. Even adding the 500 square feet.
Yeah.
This house was transformed markedly. It is just amazing to see this. It looks like a modern structure of beauty, and that you would find somewhere in a big city. I mean, it's
Oh
just
my goodness,
beautiful.
How's my blushing doing?
Well, it's true.
It
It's
really
actually
is.
true. It's, you know, it's something that you would see in New York. Maybe you know, a high-rise sort of exquisite apartment in New York, and everyone that comes by, our neighbors, you know, they take walks by our house, and whenever my wife and I are out in the yard, sort of doing our yard work, they comment on the house, how wonderful it is, and they can't wait to see it.
All right, let's talk about that front entrance. How were you able to get the focal point in the front, Damian?
Well, just, you know, backing up, that elevation, the street elevation we see in that house is in many places around town. It's a rectangular house with a low-pitched roof, gable facing the street, and the only windows being up in the triangle of the gable. So it's not an inviting elevation, if you will, and that's, I think, what caused this confusion as to where the front door. There were doors either side, on either corner, and so it was sort of, which one did you pick? So my concept was, and especially as I got to know Terry and John more, and the warmth that they exude, and the passion for having people in their home, was almost, you know, imagine taking your hand and cupping it in an L, and that's what the design does. It cups that corner as if you were holding it with your hand, so that the entry wraps around and created what I described as this little jewel box. It's very small, it's very compact, because we were right up against the setback line. We didn't have very much space to work with at all, and in fact the outside wall of the entry is not parallel to the wall of the house, because the street is not parallel to the house, and so our setback was driven by the street. So the shape of that was really driven by the limitation of the building envelope. But the concept was that when the lights were on in there, it was very obvious this is where you walked up to, and all of that glass, that floor-to-ceiling glass, gave you a view then of the back wall of the original house.
And by adding in the way you added this L to wrap around that side, the right side of the home.
That's correct.
That took care of the problem with the side door then?
Yes.
The side door is somewhat hidden now, isn't it?
Oh, now, well, the side door, yes, but the side door is exactly where it was before.
Right.
But now that jewel box in the front draws you to it. You
Yeah.
Oh, I want to see what this is. Oh, it's the front door. And
Right.
And the porch kind of floats, so it's an exquisite design, and it provides balance. And to me, that's what design is. It's all about balance. And so when we wake up in the morning, it really reflects that almost unconscious to us. And Damian talks about affecting lives, and he did. I mean, all we wanted is we wanted a better place to entertain, and we wanted a front door that was obvious. We got something far, far more. It changed our life.